Yeah, sometimes you just gotta eat ass and then get through your next year day. And other times, sometimes I take the lead, and it's just always an awkward intro when I start something. Like I don't even know how to start a podcast. Um, I'm hoping that you can take the lead there. Do you think you can handle kicking us off?
No, seriously, this morning I was like, we have two options here. We either make a joke about eating ass and say, like, we don't need Jermaine, or we say we need him because there's no one here to talk about eating ass.
Well, you already got three eating asses at the start of this episode. Welcome to the Unsolicited Counseling Podcast. You're your host. This is Martin.
And I'm Catherine.
And we are obviously missing one of our co-hosts here. We're missing Jermaine. He is enjoying his time in Mexico right now. He sends love from afar. He sends many pictures of him drinking beer, eating ass, and getting twerked on by ghetto, redbone Latina women. It's crazy. He texts me all this and he thinks it's okay, but it is what it is. Welcome again. Today we are going to take a different route. We're going to talk about a Netflix show that Catherine mentioned to me. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, this one we've had in our back pocket for a little while. I'm excited about this. What was that, back in like January or February, maybe?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I know this came out in 2022, and I think it was early this year you reached out and you said, hey, you should really check out this documentary.
Yeah, so we're talking about Stutz, which is the documentary about Jonah Hill's therapist and the tools that he uses in therapy. And I watched it one night, immediately texted Martin and was like, you have to watch this. And then he actually watched it that night, and I watched it a second time.
Yeah, it was kind of cool because you texted me. You were like, "You really got to watch this," and I think it was really late. It was like 11 p.m. at night, and I was just happened to be up, and I was like, "You know what? I got a little energy. I'll check this out." I really like therapy, and this was we're almost into our second year of unsolicited counseling, so I was like, "Oh, I wonder how people are actually going through therapy and how I can make our work more impactful when we do the podcast and just learn different tools and techniques to help me in my own journey." But before we get into the episode and take a deep dive, how you doing, Catherine?
I'm okay. I had a little bit of a rough day today. Coming back from a little vacation, first day in reality. I had a job interview that lasted like 2 hours, so my brain is a little mushy. Also waiting for the hurricane to come here in North Carolina.
There's a
So,
hurricane?
or I guess by the time it gets here, it'll be like a tropical storm, but it's supposed to start raining any second.
I think that I'm so far removed from the media. I had no idea there's a hurricane. Like I should be like texting, making sure you're okay, and all my friends in North Carolina are going to be okay. Like I didn't even fathom it. Like how bad is it right now? Like where is it located? The hurricane.
I think it came in on like the west side of Florida, and we're just gonna get rain basically. So I think it's fine. But
That tracks because one of my friends in Florida, she was like, "Oh yeah, there's a hurricane, so I'm not gonna run," and I didn't even think anything of it. I was like, "Oh, you should be fine." I'm like, wait a minute, it's a hurricane.
yeah,
Oh my god, no, that's bad. But yeah, so you're waiting for the
yeah,
hurricane.
yeah. It's yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I like how you tried to like breeze past the fact that you did not have an incident that happened prior to the podcast again. I'm gonna let it be known just so no one's like shocked when you see a fly out of nowhere during the episode. Before we got onto the podcast, I was just chatting with Catherine, just making sure we had a good plan on how we're gonna approach without Jermaine. And out of nowhere, she just has a fly up her nose, and she had the craziest reaction to it. She was just like,
No, have you ever had like anything go up your nose?
aside from a finger, no. I can't say that I had. Or you know what? That's a lie. Earlier this week, I
I
did.
don't want to know. I'm sorry.
It's a COVID test. Relax, relax. It wasn't booger sugar. It wasn't anything crazy like that. It was just a COVID test. I was feeling and kind of leading into how I'm doing. earlier this week. I think it was Sunday. It was Sunday. I was feeling a little ill. Like I had like a fever, not a fever, but a headache, and I was like worried that I could be like really sick from earlier. Well, something that happened the end of last week. I was in the office and we were doing a training. One of the people that was assigned to our group in training, she was wearing a mask, and I was just like, oh, there's a new variant going around. She's just being safe. I want to say at least within a 3 hour span, there was about 26 coughs, and we're like in a group, and she's like right in front of me, and I was just like, okay, we're dying today. This is what's happening. I probably got COVID. So like I panic a little bit on Sunday. I was like, oh crap, I might have COVID. Let me take a test. So leading into why I was picking my nose, but not my finger, but the cotton swab or whatever it is to take the test. Luckily it came through negative, so we are all good, and that's why we're here recording the podcast. Now, in general, my life is going relatively okay. Yesterday was I had my stressful day yesterday. I got it out the way. Today was a lot more relaxed. I just worked, got caught up on Stutz so we can have this episode, and pretty much relaxed. But leading into the next couple of days, it's going to get pretty busy work wise. I think I'm going to be in the office again, which I always enjoy. I enjoy it so much. It's like the best thing when you get a call at like 3 p.m. when you have one more hour left to work, and they say, "Hey, I need you to come in on Friday, even though we're going to have a 3 hour early dismissal for Labor Day." It's fantastic. I love my
I'm
job.
glad. Yeah, I'm glad to see you're using the tools and you're thinking positively.
Yes, and that is a good segue into Stutz, where we go through different tools. I think one of the ways we wanted to approach this episode was to talk about each tool and how it relates to our personal life and how we use that to overcome any type of anxiety, pain, or fear that we have in our life. But before we get into that, we got to ask, what you drinking? So, what are you drinking, Catherine?
Today, while I was away on vacation, I stopped at Trader Joe's and I
Oh,
got a bottle of wine from Trader Joe's. It's called a Pet Nat. So it's like a
a pet nap.
Pet Nat, petulant natural.
Okay.
How nerdy do you want me to get?
Oh, go for it. You're the resident sommelier. Go ahead.
All
There goes the fly.
right. No, he's still up there somewhere. All right. Petulant means prickly. So with this wine, they leave like a little tiny bit of yeast in the bottom. Uh huh. And it's basically alive. So it's kind of like kombucha, but it's wine. Slightly sparkling, funky. It's good.
Is that like a location in Europe? Because I
No,
know.
it's a style.
Okay, it's a style.
Yeah.
So you said it has like a pear flavor. Did you say pear? You said prickly. So I just
Oh, that's what petulant means. It means prickly. But yeah, it has like a yeah, like apricot kind of flavor to it.
got you. Sounds refreshing. I wish I could partake, but another week, another time of me not drinking alcohol. Before I
What are you
even
drinking?
before I even talk about that, I do want to comment on something that happened in a prior episode. So
Oh boy.
one of our listeners listened to an episode of the podcast, and I was gaslit. I was insulted because I said in that episode that I've never had a pear. They were like, "How have you never had a pear?" I said, "Is a pear an apple?" They said, "No. Are you dumb?" So I just want to sit here. I just want to point out that I went out my way to find a pear at my store, my local Safeway. They did not have it. All they had was green apples. So I don't think pears are a real thing at this point. And if they are, they're probably just apples. You know what? If you agree, send a message. Let me know if I'm right, if I'm wrong. It is what it is. But I couldn't find that. So instead, I bought myself a new drink that I haven't put on the podcast. A lot of people say, oh, it's going to be Wild Wonder again. No, we're not doing Wild Wonder. We're getting outside of our comfort zone a little bit, and we're trying Olivia's Organics. It is a green mango tango. That's what it's called. It's an excellent source of vitamin C, vitamin K. Did you notice that I'm like dropping lower and lower as the podcast goes on? This chair is broken. And
that what it is?
That's just, I'm
I
just
did
like
notice.
slowly. I'm just trying to get down to how I feel. I just feel really low, so I'm just slowly sinking into the sunken place. But no, um, yeah, green mango tango, excellent source of vitamin C, K, source of potassium and folate. No sugar added. Olivia is sweet enough. Actual words
Wait,
listed on it.
let me see that expiration date.
Oh, before we got on the podcast, I was mentioning how I'm not sure when it actually expires, but
Oh, yeah.
is that a 9 or an 8 or a 6? Is it a 6? We're going to find out. So, I haven't tried this before, so we're going to try it out and we're going to give it a rating because I also found out that we haven't been giving ratings to drinks lately and we need to get better about that. Give this a good shake. It's like one of those little health drinks that I know I'm going to hate, but I got to sit through the podcast and deal with it. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh my god. Oh,
How
oh my
expired
god.
is it?
Oh my god. It tastes like celery. Like, just celery. I mean, it does have a celery heart in it, so it makes sense. But
Yeah.
it's just the celery is so overpowering that I'm not getting any of the notes of the apple. No mango, no kale, no spinach. Just celery. You ever had celery water?
I have, and you know what's really funny? I'm gonna have to do a little segue for my man Bodie here.
Okay.
Bodie will literally eat anything. Like he eats any food. He'll eat the nastiest garbage. He eats anything he can find. And like I'll feed him vegetables and fruit and stuff while I'm cooking or making something. The only thing I've ever seen him spit back out is celery. And he looked up at me like, "What was that, Mom?"
So I can't even pawn it off on Bodhi. That's how bad this drink is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, needless to say, I have to give this a rating. I'm giving this a 2 out of 10 because, I believe there's things worse than this, but this is really bad. So I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. I mean, I haven't eaten ass, so that could probably be underneath it. But for now, we're going to put celery water, whatever this is, at 2 out of 10. What about you?
No, mine is really good. I would say you can tell that it's like a little bit budget friendly, but I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
Well, high praise for something budget friendly. Did that improve the score or did it make it worse?
Yeah, no, I know how much it costs in my brain, so we'll give it a 7.
Got you. I always heard that like wine prices are a myth. Like some you get like the most expert sommelier, two different wine, well the same wine, but one's cheap and one's more expensive. They're not going to really know which one's the best or the more expensive. They kind of all taste relatively similar. Is that the case?
Yeah, the wine market is kind of like anything else where like it's impacted a lot by where the wine is made and produced and who makes it and things like that. So it's hard to tell.
Gotcha. Well, now that we've gotten the horrible, horrific drinks out the well, at least my drink was horrible. And I think I'm having a little bit of trauma from drinking this. I think it's a perfect segue to go into Stutz, the
You have a
documentary.
terrible you have a terrible drink and I have a bug up my nose. So let's
Right? So we're obviously living our best life and we're thriving. And we're happy to bring you this episode talking about Stutz. And like we said at the onset of the episode, I want to start talking about different tools that were mentioned by Phil Stutz in the episode. As Catherine alluded to earlier, this was Jonah Hill's therapist. He's been his therapist for a couple years. This actually took a couple years to produce and shoot. I think it took about like at least 3-4 years, but I think it took more than that, if I'm not mistaken. But before we get into the tools, what are your initial thoughts on the production?
uh it's interesting. So I've watched it several times now. When I first watched it, it was like actually mind blowing. Like I said, I watched it twice in a row. Um, and then today I watched it again for the first time in a while. and I still thought it was just as impactful, and the production was really good. I could also see like a little bit of growth in myself and how I've implemented tools, so that was good.
Do you actively use these tools in your day to day life, or did you kind of forget about them and then after seeing it again, you're like, oh, you know what? I need to start implementing this again?
A few of them I think I've actively implemented without realizing that I am, but there were definitely a few things that I was like, oh yeah, I really want to revisit that. What about you?
Yeah, kind of the same analysis. There are
Yeah.
things that were mentioned in here that I think even the first time I watched this, I was already implementing, but I just didn't have a name for it. And this kind of put a face and an image on a note card that I could reference and say like, oh, this is me in a dark place. This is me insulting the old me. This is me how I'm managing loss. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but this is actually what I'm doing. But then there's also some scenarios where I just, I didn't think of the world in a certain way. And we're going to get into some of that. And the first thing that I brought up, I took my little notes. I don't know how you guys stay organized, but I take a lot of notes. And the first thing that I identified was the life force. And the life force is basically there's three levels of the life force. There's the physical body, your relationship with people, and the relationship to the selves. And those are like the three pillars. The bottom, the biggest one, is the physical body, and it goes up to the top of the triangle, which is the relationship with the self. And why this was more so impactful to me is that I think it rings true that if you do take care of yourself, everything else kind of is easier. You're not really worrying about a scenario or situation or a problem that you have. Like everything, like let's say, you know, for example, bug plug. You know what? I won't use the bug reference. I'll use this. I had this. No, this isn't impactful enough. The fact that I'm going into the office later this week, we're gonna use that as an
Yeah.
example. It is horrible. I it's not horrible. I love my job, but it's an unfortunate circumstance that I have to go back into the office after being in there all day yesterday. I'm not really happy about it, but it used to drain and weigh on me really heavily when I got like a piece of bad news, and I didn't know why I would spiral and get into these like depressive episodes where I'm just like, oh, woe is me, the world's out to get me, this, that, and the third. Um, I notice now as I've grown older, I've figured out like my triggers and what makes me sad and how I can overcome those feelings and how I can prevent that from happening or, make me realize, life's not that bad. And one of the things that I do implement, I do work out. I started running, as I've mentioned in many episodes, but just exercise is like the first thing. You get all the like serotonin, you get all those endorphins going. You're feeling really good about yourself, and it's just like nothing can bring you down, and nothing's worse for me personally when I'm not active. Like if I have a rest day, which seems horrible, you're supposed to take rest and breaks, but when I have a rest day, I feel miserable because I know the thing that helps me handle my depression, my depressive episodes, is being active and not being able to do that. And yeah, it just really sucks. And then kind of leading into the tears with the relationship with people. If I take care of myself, I present the best version of myself to the people that I care about, the people that I love. So my wife gets the best version of me. And I feel good about myself when I combine the relationship with the physical aspect, the physical body, taking care of my physical self, and taking care of like my family and friends. Then I feel good. I'm like, okay, was today a win or a loss? Today is a win because I took care of all the things I need to take care of, including myself. I can rest knowing that I put forth a valiant effort and I got better today. What about you? Do you have any thoughts on the life force?
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention at the very, very beginning, Stutz says that he started writing down these tools and using this because a lot of people turn to therapy when they need help, and you don't. You're not having a great day, and you're like, "Hey, I should go to a therapist to make sure I keep having great days." Like you typically go when you're seeking help, but a lot of times the technique that therapists use is just listening and making you solve your own problems, and it can feel like it takes forever. Um, and I like that. And he actually says that, like, you go to your therapist for help and they listen. You go to your friends to listen and they give you all this unsolicited, like, advice and opinions.
I do remember when I heard that the first time, and I was like, "Hey, we have a podcast. It's called
Yeah.
Unsolicited Advice, where just your friends give you advice you didn't ask for." And I felt like he gave us a shout out without knowing he gave us a shout out, so it was really cool for me.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to play the clip in the podcast, but
You know, that is something I thought about doing. This is an aside, but I thought about like doing like a watch, like a watch companion episode
yeah,
where we like have it playing and then we discuss it while it's going on. But we'll save that for future episodes. I got to figure out how to get all the things working so we can do that. But I didn't mean to cut you off with my thoughts on that.
no, that
What?
was a good aside. But yeah, Life Force. Jonah Hill also mentioned something about like growing up. Working out for him was something that you did to reach a goal. It was intended to help you lose weight, or it wasn't just a regular part of being like healthy overall. And that really resonated with me too, because a lot of working out, it was towards a goal of being a better dancer, like growing up, or there wasn't that aspect of just doing it to be the best version of yourself. So that really stuck with me.
Yeah, I think that but I think that there's value in having that goal, right? Like knowing that okay, I'm working towards X so I can be the best dancer. But you don't realize in doing that you're healing yourself in a I guess healing yourself in a way that you're taking care of your body, so you're not as sad because you have these energy, you're doing this workout, you're feeling good. You just don't know why you're feeling good. Like it seems like when you're a kid, you're so happy. Life is the best because you don't have any responsibilities, but you're also running around all the time. You have like so much energy. You're playing. You're having a good time. And I think that that gets lost as you get older. We stop playing. We stop moving around. I think movement is energy, and that energy makes you happy. So I think that you can still work towards a goal as long as you're not obsessive over the goal and you don't try to like put yourself and kind of leading into another element is the snapshot where you lead yourself into this ideal that this perfect life, this perfect idea of what you're supposed to be and who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to act, live, and be. I'll let you lead into, or I guess, talk about your snapshot. I do want to talk about mine, but I'm probably going to get emotional, so I'll let you talk about your snapshot.
No, actually, my one of the big things I wanted to hear was about like what is your snapshot?
Way to turn it on me.
Yeah,
So, that's valid, and I should. So my snapshot, it's just changed over time. Um, there's always you always have these goals, right? And you're like, okay, by X, like by the time I'm 30, I should have a house and a family and a kid, or like by this time I'll have like a nice sports car. For me, it was always had like short term goals. I never really had the big picture goal. It was just like I just want to be. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to have the lifestyle that I had growing up, where I didn't have. Well, I had enough, but it wasn't enough. Does that make sense? Like I had enough to get by, but I knew my family was struggling. I knew my parents were struggling to make ends meet. I knew that I hung out with friends and they had way more than me, and they seemed happier. They probably were happier. I don't know. I'll never know. But it just seemed like my biggest thing was I want to be able to have enough money to where I don't have to think about money. And then it kind of evolved to okay, I need to make $100,000. And then once I hit that plateau, it was like, oh, well, what else is there to life? Like, there's nothing else for me to work towards. I'm just existing. And then it turned into, okay, I want to be married and start a family. And then it's like, okay, well, I want to be married, start a family, and a house. Got married. That's out the way. Check that box. But, still don't have the family yet. Still don't have like the picket fence. Like I fell in love with the idea of the American dream, So I think that that's my snapshot. I want to get to the point where I have a house, I have kids, I have like good health. That's something that a lot of people don't talk about in their picture, but I want good health, and that's why I'm like slowly, methodically working through the steps to get to that point. But I struggle with the idea that maybe that won't happen. Like, I don't want to think of a scenario where I'm working towards this and I can't achieve it. Like, I think that I would be a failure, or I feel like I'm a failure, even though like I know in the deep recesses of my mind that I'm not a failure in some regards. It's just like if I don't reach that perfect picture, then I'm not value. I don't have value. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it
That
does
was a
make
hard truth, man. Whew.
yeah.
Sorry. What
Is
about
the
you?
idea is the idea of the snapshot though that it's like something that you're so fixated on this like outcome or the snapshot that like you're limiting yourself?
I think it. I
Or
think
is
that
it supposed to be a goal?
it's both. Like I think that I'm working so hard towards that I can't be anything else. Like if I don't reach that goal, then it's a failure, and I'm like not fulfilling what I feel is my destiny and my calling as a man to be a provider, to take care of his family, and try to be the best version of myself because I think that is the best version of myself. So yeah, I think it's both. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I actually really want to go back and listen to this part again because I actually did get confused by it some today. I initially thought that it was like basically this one like very stationary picture that you have that you're reaching towards and that you're like not flexible and not setting yourself up for other successes by fixating on this one like snapshot. Um
I do know that in the documentary, he mentions when talking about the screenshot or the snapshot, he also mentions that you have this perfect idea, this perfect image of your life,
mhm,
and on the way to that image, you can't avoid the three aspects of reality, which I mean, three aspects of life, which we didn't talk about yet, but the three aspects of life are pain, uncertainty, and constant work. Like no matter what you do in life, those are three things that you can't avoid. They're constants. You're gonna have to navigate that throughout your entire life. And some of those things could lead you off your path towards that perfect picture, or it could affect your perfect picture. And I guess I was unbeknownst to me, I was alluding to those things coming into my life and ruining this perfect picture. Um, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What's your snapshot?
Uh, so when I first watched this, it was really difficult for me because that was right in the beginning of going through uh, my breakup. And so my snapshot, uh, I felt like I lost my snapshot basically. I had a perfect picture of it, and then I felt like, yeah, it was just gone. Um, and I like wasn't able to make a new snapshot. I've just been like holding on to that one. So I've slowly been like detaching from the idea of a snapshot, I guess. And my current one is just like building a really strong community and like close knit, healthy support system in general. So I'm trying not to get really attached to like actual physical outcomes.
Do you think that that's affecting your ability to, I guess, make human connections in general? Like that, not having a snapshot, or I guess, yeah, not having a snapshot of, from your prior relationship, that's kind of what you pictured. Do you think that's inhibiting you from meeting new people or wanting to imagine a world aside from that snapshot?
Uh, well, when you look at like the life forces, basically, I think that. It's just I'm working on myself, and then with the snapshot currently being like building a strong community and making strong, healthy relationships. I think it's just being more intentional about the snapshot. I don't know. That's a good question. You threw me a little bit.
Yeah, that's what we do on the podcast. We get uncomfortable. We want to get into those areas of your brain that you don't really think about or you don't want to think about. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about Stutz. By the way, I think we said it already, but it's on Netflix. I'll add a link in the description box so you can kind of go to it and point to it. Um, but I think one of the other things about this documentary that I really enjoyed or that I think about a lot is the shadow version of yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one's rough. It's so not to give away too much. Thank you. I was like, I can't even see you. I feel like I'm talking to like a goblin or something. I don't know what's happening over there. Uh,
I kept
but
the lights off in case the fly came back out of my nose. That doesn't need to be out there in the world.
now it's out there. It's somewhere inside, but it's gonna make its way out for the end of this podcast. I can feel it. But
Sneeze.
like, what is
The shadow.
that? Okay, we gotta get back on topic. We're both using humor to deflect, but
That's a good
um,
partner in the documentary too.
yep, yep. As you can see, we both are very big fans of this documentary. But yeah, so the shadow is basically the version of yourself that you hide from the world. It's the version of yourself that you don't really like, and you don't want people to really see that side of you. I don't know if this is necessarily my shadow, but one of the memories that I have, maybe not too long after I graduated, was that I hated the college version of myself. And that college version of myself is the reason why I'm friends with you, friends with Jermaine. Man, maybe not friends, but he definitely he was there, right? He physically was there. But, there are a lot of memories that were made in college that some were good, but I fixated for the most part on the negative side of things. And it really came to a head when I went to my college reunion, the 5 year college reunion. And we talked about this in the prior episode. You can go back and look at it and and hear about where my headspace was. But I, to this day, I still don't really like. I appreciate the things that College Martin did, like who he was and how he made these friends. But I also don't agree with some of the actions that he did and how he hurt people. I mean, I've been very candid and honest on this podcast, and I'm going to do it again. Like, I cheated on my girlfriend at the time in college because I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I was like, oh, there's a loophole. We're on a break. Like, we're not together. So it's fine to be with someone else because we made a decision that we're break. But, to her, we didn't really set parameters of what a break meant. And a break for her was like, we're just taking time apart and, we're going to figure it out. And I took that as, oh, it's time for me to go and screw the school, essentially.
Hoe it up.
Basically. Um, and, looking back and knowing how much pain I caused from that and how it's changed a lot of things in my life, and I've been called names and insulted, and some people have praised me, and it's not a good feeling to carry the fact that you've hurt someone so deeply. And it took me a while to kind of get over that side of, I mean, just understanding that I could cause that kind of pain to someone. I think it's natural. I think it's okay. Like, I don't understand how someone can willfully hurt someone, knowingly do that, and then just go about their day like nothing happens. Like, I'm so empathic and I care so much about people that I did that to the person that I was supposed to love. Like, that's fucked up. That's wrong. So I've been avoiding this truth, this shadow of myself that I don't. and I think it's a good thing to avoid this shadow version of myself because I don't want to be that person. But I also need to acknowledge that it exists. Like I did do that, and I need to make sure that I don't put myself in situations or positions where that could happen and happening now, especially now. Like, I'm married, so I think that holds more weight for sure if anything were to happen. But I definitely wouldn't want to put my wife through that. I wouldn't want to put anyone through that. So yeah, that's one of those things that I avoid.
Yeah. I think the point of the shadow, though, and like Stutz makes a really good. His point is that I think at one point Jonah Hill asks like, "Well, how do you get rid of your shadow?" And he says like, "You can't. Your shadow will literally always be with you." So like, you can't hate your shadow. You have to like talk to that shadow version of yourself and understand why you did what you did and say that like it's okay now together we do better. Like shadow, I understand you. You're not going to do that again. Come on, buddy. You know.
Yeah, and it's definitely different use cases, and yeah, I don't want to give too much away about the documentary, but his shadow and my shadow were two different, completely different scenarios. Do you have a shadow that you've, I guess, that you're avoiding or don't feel comfortable about?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying too, and that's what I'm trying to give you some unsolicited counseling because I've been working really hard on it in therapy currently. And so my therapist and I have nicknamed my shadow the monster. This is like getting real. She's the only other person that I've talked about this with. Um, and now it's on a podcast.
Just ignore the cameras, ignore the viewers, the listeners. Just dig in.
Yeah, and so no, we especially recently we talk a lot about the monster and like the lengths that I've gone to like cover up the monster and try to hide it from people and others and like what actions that makes me do and instead of just acknowledging that and so, like we're working it sounds so silly when you say it out loud but it actually works like really working on like oh no that's the monster voice and like thanks monster but you be quiet now.
I mean, if it works
And
for
it
you, then it's fine.
well yeah well it stems from like an intense fear of like abandonment that came from childhood. And so like the monster voice will like literally do anything and everything to not get abandoned. And it doesn't matter if it's like positive or negative interactions and attention. Um, it's just like a primal need. So yeah, I really related to the shadow part, and I could see a lot of work that I had done on myself, and I was like, "Hey, the shadow is the same thing as the monster." Um,
And cast the big shadow, your monster. Cast a big shadow. So it kind of relates a little bit because you. It's like the cool thing about. Well, I guess this analogy did not work the way it worked in my head. The cool thing about your shadow is that it's behind you, but that's not necessarily true. But it's definitely beneath you. It's definitely beneath you. So it's okay. Maybe yeah, it's slightly lower. Just you know what? Just keep the lights above you, and then your shadow will always be beneath you or beside you. It's hiding, but anyway, it's not the forefront of who you are, and it's not. You aren't your. You are the sum of your actions, not just your one action that you hate or you despise yourself for, or despise that you've done. Maybe not despise yourself for, but despise that you've done. And that idea has really helped me kind of overcome that monster, that shadow that I have. Is like, okay, I did a bad thing. That doesn't make me a bad person.
Exactly. Well, and that's like the whole point of the work that we're doing now, and that like Stutz references with the shadow is understanding where that comes from and why. So that way, like it's something that's so core about you, you're not going to be able to like fully get rid of it. It's not always there, just like your shadow's not always there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something that you're just going to have forever, and so you have to acknowledge it and learn how to like live with it.
I think there's like a connection between the shadow and we haven't talked about this, but part X is like a
Yeah.
little connection there. And part X is basically that force, or I call it like the devil on your shoulder saying, like, you don't need to do that, or just be lazy, or, just don't work towards getting to that perfect picture. It's never going to happen. It's that negative thought, that negative feedback that you have in your give yourself in your conscious, like, you're never going to be good enough. You're not going to be able to do this. Why would they invite you to X? Like, you're not important. Why would best friend be late to start the podcast? She just doesn't want to do this with you. Like, these like great, and that's a real thought. I was like, man,
Yeah, geez, way to call me out.
but
Jermaine.
but but I'm just trying to be. I'm just being honest, and like these are like the thoughts that ran through my head. Like
Yeah.
ultimately, I knew I was like, okay, well, if something came up, like she'd just be like, okay, like something came up, and she's not gonna make it. It'd be fine. Like life goes on. It's not a reflection of her character. Like but I have to like go through all these like thought exercises to get me to the point where, oh, she's like, she hates me. She doesn't care about anything that we're working on, and this goes for every aspect of my life. Like, I think way too much. But I
But
also
you
know
know,
how to bring myself back to like reality and realize that people are their own thing. People have their own lives. They're not all on my schedule. They're not like shit happens, right? Just understanding that. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna give you a pat on the back and tell you to give yourself a pat on the back though, because like 5 years ago, Martin would have like been really salty, blown me up, maybe have canceled the podcast, maybe have just like, you would have acted on those first feelings without like going through the thought process to get to a healthy part. So that's pretty impressive. That's that constant growth thing. That's constant work. That's
Yeah,
uh
man. But I will say that there is a balance to that. Like it had to be, and it's not really tied to the string of pearls, but I do think that
uh,
consistent actions would like make you think a certain way, whether it's like from the same person or if it's from like multiple people doing the same thing to you. You kind of build this idea of this is how people in the world are. Like some people have like a really jaded view of the world and how people act, and just like all people are shit, or a lot of women in the dating world, all men are shit, or all women suck, or whatever it is. Like, and I don't think people really necessarily believe that, but consuming that type of, I guess, consuming that type of stimulus and starting to believe it is, detrimental to the individual. Like making these broad generalizations about who a person is or what people are, like it can definitely hurt you. And that's something that I've learned over time. But there is also a balance between, understanding that if someone consistently did the same thing to you over and over, like canceling last second, then it's like, okay, well, this is just a person who is one, probably not organized, or two, like they just really don't value your time. So, but you need to be able to set a boundary to say, okay, well, if they're not going to be available for this time that we set, or they don't have like a real excuse, so they don't try to reschedule or anything, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to put the time and effort towards, making sure that things can work or we can hang out again because you got to meet me halfway type thing. And, as of late, in general, really, you have been meeting me halfway. And then if we did have something that we didn't schedule, we'd figure it out and get it figured out. So, and I've had my own times where I'm like, hey, I can't do this. Can we move it? Like last week, the podcast, I was like, hey, I want to go see my nephew. Can we move the podcast a little earlier? You and Jermaine made that happen for me. And I'm very grateful to have friends like you in my life that are willing to look out for me. And it's all growth. Like we always say, it's all growth.
yep, we do it for each other. Uh the one that we haven't talked about yet that I really wanted to get to was the maze. Do you have any notes on that one?
Let me see. I remember writing it down. Oh, yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
That is one that I definitely struggle with. But let me hear your thoughts on the maze.
I don't have my notes right in front of me on that one because it was in the car, so you're gonna have to give me a refresher. But the maze is basically talking about um, what prevents you from moving forwards, and you get stuck in essentially like a maze. But what on the bottom of the note card? What's the drawing? Because I know it's the maze and arrow moving forwards, and what's on the bottom?
I don't have the picture. I don't have the imagery, but I do remember the concept is like this constant quest to make things right or make things fair and even, and life not always going to work that way. So sometimes you do have to go back to uh, the life force and work those steps because you'll eventually forget about it because the most important thing to you is your life force, which I think that's very huge to think about it that way. Like, all right, well, these are things outside of your control that you can't change. You can't make someone apologize. You can't make someone give you that job that you were overlooked for. All you can do is focus on the you and get better. So, for me, the maze that I struggle with the most, and we're being honest on this podcast, is like if someone hurts my feelings and they don't apologize, I always need to look for that apology before I can move forward. Like saying like, oh, they say let's say they said something messed up about me, like, oh, you're ugly. I don't know. Let's take that. Let's pretend I'm ugly for this episode. So, so someone says that to me, and it really hurts my feelings. So it's at like a really low moment. I could typically I would historically I'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to them until they apologize to me and they make it right, and then they come up to me like maybe a couple weeks later and they act like nothing happened, and to them they most likely just forgot about it. It was just like a small comment that they were saying as a joke, but to me I'm still holding this and like really fixated on it, and it prevents me from moving forward and just forgetting about it and progressing my life and my growth. And it's also, ooh, this is coming back up.
Oh no.
Sorry. It's like inhibiting my growth, but then it's also like I'm so angry about something that's so small that I know it just doesn't make sense a lot. Um, I don't have any current situations like that keep me in the maze. I think I've learned enough to like let things go, but I definitely, I struggle with it. Like I don't let things go. Like me and my wife get into an argument, and she doesn't apologize to me. Like I'm just gonna be bitter until we come to a resolution. But that's figuring it out together.
Yeah, I think the key point of the maze that I took away is that like you're the only person that can move yourself forwards. You can't be waiting for someone else to make it fair or apologize or to make you feel better so that way you move like you can't wait on someone else to give you permission to move forwards. You have to be able to do that for yourself. And yeah, it's funny how that one fits into the shadow and the like it you have to accept that shadow because you and your shadow are moving forwards through the maze together. So
Yep, that self-righteous asshole, the shadow or the monster, is going through this battle with you, and they just keep throwing these. What is it called? I've already forgot the name of it. Part X at you. They're just like throwing all these bad thoughts and these opinions and ideas at you, and you just gotta overcome them. But fuck that guy. Anyway, so we finally got through the episode. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concern, maybe you think they're out of pocket, maybe you had a different opinion on Stutz, and you're just like, hey, where was the warning that you're spoiling a whole thing for us? I would ask you, do you remember where they can find us?
yes, they
Oh.
can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Gmail. I believe Twitter, Threads. Nope, we're not on X.
We're not on X. You're missing
No,
one
but
big one. Where is this getting posted?
oh, hey man, you can listen to this wherever you listen to your podcasts, your favorite applications.
YouTube.
Oh yeah, and if you want to see a bug fly in my nose and come back out, you can catch us on YouTube too.
All right, thank you guys, and really good episode. You know what we always say. Well, what Jermaine typically says is since he's not
Yeah.
here. Oh my God, I don't know his quote. We
We're
love you
here for you
guys.
guys.
We're here for you guys. One drink at a time. Blooper
One
reel.
drink at a
One drink at
time.
a time. One episode at a time. Later.
Later.